back. Welcome back to the Los Angeles Tribune, and of course, today, the Dr. Natalie Show. As you know, we have lots of shows all the time, but my show is different. It's early morning somewhere, it's late evening in some other places, and I know everybody who usually turns in, thank you so much for being here, coming late, leaving early because there's breakfast, dinner, and other things to take care of. You know, the show's always also on Roku. And of course, I love your comments. So don't hesitate, just comment away as usual. And today, especially, I am going to bring you an introduction to a person whom I've known, I want to say maybe for, I know, 5 years. Time flies when you're having fun. It is important though, because this person usually is introducing others. He usually does things that are putting other people in the spotlight, connecting other people instead of being in the spotlight himself. So today I'm going to have the pleasure of welcoming, here we go, you ready? There we go, Ed Cohen, good morning.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Natalie, for having me on this prestigious program. I'm really honored.
Well, it is a pleasure, and you got up very, very early to be here.
Yeah, well, sometimes I do, um, but this one came early. Yes.
Well, we got to explain that, Ed is actually out in California, not too far away from the Los Angeles Tribune headquarters, but still, it's early. Good morning to the audience. They're slowly coming in. Ed, I've known you, I think, is it about right, 4 to 5 years?
Yes. Yeah, we met. You came to one of my events, live events. Remember
Yes.
those? In DC,
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. Area, and spoke to our corporate audience, and they all loved it. And so, um, loved having you there and your wisdom and your insight about people issues,
Yes.
because these were all business people. So some of them were a little standoffish at first, but then they warmed up immediately to your approach.
You are so kind. You are so kind. I do want to talk about how we met a little bit and how you were able to still focus on what you love, but completely switch. Even though I know your area is marketing, it is, showing off other people as experts. But as you just said, we met during an event that you put on, and you had conferences in many different places across the globe. I think started probably way before I can remember, like 2018, 2017, 2018. And tell the audience, if you wouldn't mind, and I'm going to take a back seat for a moment. What is it that you do, and what is your focus point? Because we are, of course, talking about global HR. So just share a little bit about yourself and what you do, if you wouldn't mind.
First of all, I want to show you this cup, this coffee cup that I have in my hand here. And this is a meme. This is a photo that I took at the Honolulu Zoo when Joanne and I were there a few years ago. And I love this picture so much because here's this guy striving to eat. And that's exactly the foundation for what I'm going to say. Okay. Because we're striving to pay some bills and we're striving to get recognition and give recognition to people who, in my view, nobody needs it, but deserve it because of their market presence. So, to make a long story real short, uh, I've been involved in this form of marketing and public relations for a very long time. Um, Starting approximately in 1976 when I lived in Boston, which is about 3,000 miles from here in San Diego. And we're right on the southwest corner of Southern California and Tijuana, Mexico. And by the way, the combined metro region of San Diego and Tijuana is like huge. And uh, well over 3.5 million people, just to give you an idea of the metropolitan density here. in Southwest U.S. So we moved from L.A. From Boston, um, driving across the country to L.A. And it took about a week. We stopped in Niagara Falls, stopped to see family in Chicago, um, went to the Rocky Mountains, and then down into West LA. And uh, earlier, I was publishing a guidebook in Boston called Settling In, Greater Boston. And settling in referred to corporate recruitment of talent into the Route 128 high tech belt around Greater Boston. And at that time, the mini computer was the rage. IBM had this massive room sized computer, and there's a couple of companies, one in particular, Digital Equipment Corporation. Um, these guys were geniuses. They figured out how to reduce, to miniaturize a mini computer, to put it on a desktop, and it took off. And so they had trouble finding computer scientists and software engineers. Again, this is late 70s. So they had to recruit people in from around the world, and they didn't have a device at the time. So I've been in PR and marketing and advertising forever. So one of the recruiters who knew me wanted to hire me. And I said, no, no, I got to be in my own business. Why don't you hire me to put out a magazine or something that you could use as an attraction tool? And so that began. And so he did. And so that began settling in Greater Boston. And this was a guidebook, a magazine, 8.5 by 11, glossy print, color pages, full of community and school and tax rate information for all the communities around the Greater Boston area. And there was nothing like it at the time. Um, and so the first edition came out in late 77. So long ago, I can't even remember saying those words, but um, it took off right away. Uh, More than 100,000 copies were bought and distributed. They were bought by companies and by chambers of commerce and real estate related, relocation related companies to give to prospective talent to learn about what it's cost to live and about the choices of communities and lifestyles within communities around the greater Boston area. So this became a destination guide, a newcomer's guide, destination information. When we got referrals in through a little card that we had, paper card that people had to mail in, um, and we did have an 800 number, toll free, and we had fax. Remember that? And so people from Europe who were highly skilled, particularly north of London, excuse me, in the Oxford, Cambridge University area. Um, there's a nest of computer scientists and software engineers who were way ahead of their time, and they were in high demand by these companies in Boston. And they reached out, recruited them in, and Settling In magazine became a viable tool. Uh, that distribution wound up catching the attention of the U.S. Department of Defense at the time. And they had some contracts at the time with Harvard and MIT and some other educational institutions in Boston to develop a mechanism for communications across time and space and borders. It was called the internet now, but back then it wasn't. It was called something else. I don't know what. But at the time, there was a secret deal. And so I was under agreement to not disclose hardly anything. But lots of tech firms who I never heard of started ordering bulk quantities of Settling In and shipping them around. Um, and the companies really liked this magazine. And at the time, I really didn't know what to do in terms of running a business. I was a good salesman. And so I decided I needed to merge or sell out. figure out how to run a business too. And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go for a bigger market. And so I thought of New York, which is only an hour plane ride from Boston. Then I thought
Right.
of Miami. And at the time, in the late 70s, it was playground. There was nothing there, no businesses, no high rises in Miami. And I said, boy, this would be great. Uh, but there's no business there. So big
Yeah.
business. And that's what I was used to. So I decided, no, I was not going to go. So then I decided California dreaming on such a cloudy day in Boston. That was the song by the Mamas and the Papas. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was it. I'm going to LA. So I got on a plane and I brought some copies of this Settling In magazine with me. And I cold called on the president of the LA Chamber of Commerce
Mm-hmm.
and the LA Economic Development Corp. And this is way back when. Okay. And
You keep
I
saying
said,
way back when.
yeah. So you know what? Um, they said, a lot of people come here with big ideas, but I think this one's a good one. So if you can put out a guide for California, and I know you know nothing about the area, and I don't know how you're going to do it, but if you do that, then we'll
Okay.
become a customer of yours big time. All
Wow.
right. And so I took that, and they gave me that provisional letter in writing. If I did this, then they,
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, I was riding high. So I took that to some Century 21 real estate brokers who I was introduced to from Boston contacts
Uh-huh.
to colleagues in LA area. And they warmly welcomed me in. And they said, well, we'll buy ads. How
Mm-hmm.
much do you want? And so I said, well, this and that, we're just beginning. I need information about your communities. Why don't you write up a community report and give it to me, and I'll sell you the ad right next to that page. So you essentially have a two-page spread. Man, they bought it just like that. And so I went from one to another to another. Now, at
Mm-hmm.
that time, around 1979, 80, 81, the interest rates in the US were like 14, 15%, even higher.
Right.
And nobody could buy a house. And the country was sort of in a recession,
Mm-hmm.
except companies who were into high tech and defense spending
Of course.
and anybody connected with them. Okay.
Yes.
And so the recruitment tool, which I renamed California Bound Relocation
Mm.
Guide and trademarked it right away. Um, and I still own that trademark. And the companies that were trying to recruit these high tech people
Mm-hmm.
for work on computers and software development, they were given a lot of money to move and to be hired. And they were the only ones who could afford to buy houses
Yeah.
easily because they had a guaranteed job and income. And so the employers in Southern California knew that we had a connection, a pipeline. And so they all jumped on and used our magazine. So this
Mm-hmm.
magazine, California Bound, just blossomed. And the first edition came out in late 81, early 82. And the chamber liked it. And they wound up through the 80s ordering literally thousands of these magazines.
Wow.
Then our first conference ever was in association with the LA Chamber of Commerce, and it was held in their basement cafeteria. And they hosted my customers to come in and talk about recruitment and relocation and the impact on the economy.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And the LA Economic Development Corp leader at the time, or the chief economist, was our keynote speaker, and he validated all of that information. And so the first meeting I ever produced was in October of 1984. We had almost 200 people in attendance, and the LA Chamber picked up several new members as a result of that
Mm-hmm.
audience. And so then we were off and running. And so from that time, 84, we started producing conferences, only they
Mm-hmm.
were called workshops or meetings. And
Right.
then we had some display tables. We didn't really know what we were doing. And so we just went from one to another. And our first meeting outside of the U.S., just to give you a timeline here, quick, was not until 1997, and that was in London in November, and it was held at the Hilton near the Marble Arch. Many of our customers in the US came over, and we had already some customers in London area, and one or two in Paris, one and two in Geneva, that kind of
Right.
thing. And they all came to our meeting in London. And it was a big success. And then just hop skipping along here, our first meeting in Paris was in November of '99, and more than 400 people attended that
Wow.
soiree.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
at the Hotel Le Méridien in Montparnasse, and it was a big hit.
Yeah.
And then we began to settle back into the U.S. and publish New York bound. You know, we had California bound, then New York bound, then we did Washington bound, and we did Florida bound,
Mm-hmm.
Texas bound, Chicago bound, Arizona bound, and then we began some spin-off products. Like Seattle was one of them,
Right.
Philadelphia. Um, so we've been in publishing and PR a very long time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the internet came along, um, and we didn't know what to do.
There it was. Oopsie.
I know, and so the print magazine, began to lose. Some people still use it, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
the rage was the internet and the web. I said, "Oh God, I don't know anything about this, and I'm not tech oriented. I get concepts real well."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyway, um, one of my customers was Intel up in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, meaning that
Yes.
they used our California bound guides for recruitment.
Okay.
And so the HR guy at the time says, "What are you going to do about the internet?" I said, "I don't know anything." Well, here, let me introduce you to a developer. Uh, all right, who was happened to be a friend of this guy too. So Dan was his name. Um, he's a genius, and so he set me up with what's now called globalbusinessnews.net,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in '03, 2003.
Okay.
So since then, globalbusinessnews.net has gone through different transformations and
Right.
rebirth. And but since then, according to Google Analytics, which of course measures everything, more than 1 million audience page views have occurred in
Mm-hmm.
over 100 countries. But realistically, since uh, the pandemic crashed and burned our live conference business in
Yeah.
late February of 2020. Um, and then we started doing this
Right.
TV broadcast. I had to
Yeah.
learn how to be what you do, be a talk show host.
Yeah. And then
So
I
I'm
do want to show I do want to show the image real quick because it is called the Global TV Talk Show.
yeah,
And I think sorry to interrupt, but I think it's
it's okay.
so uh, not interesting, but brilliant how you took what you did in conferences. You know, you brought people from everywhere together, and now you've got shows. And I mean, you've got people from Australia, from Lebanon, from Argentina, and we're all coming together on your show discussing important issues. I think that's just brilliant.
I thank you for your help in helping me get there. Frankly, it would not have happened as easy without you and some other people. So let me tell you a little bit about that, okay?
Yes.
So our live conference business ended in a thud
Hmm.
on February 25 and 27 of 2020. Our last two meetings were on Feb 25 in New York City in Times Square, in the offices of RSM, a big accounting company.
Yeah.
They brought clients, I brought clients. And, just to give you an idea, one of our keynoters was the head of HR for the magazine Condé Nast,
Mm.
publishers of Vogue and some other things. Um, And then 2 days later, our final meeting, as it turned out, was in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row.
Yes.
And
Yes.
our meeting was a sellout.
Yes.
Um, we had government people and some ambassador uh, relative and workers to help NGOs and governments and companies recruit into the Washington area. Um, so we produced that last meeting on Feb 27 inside this historic home on Embassy Row. President Woodrow Wilson uh,
Hmm.
lived there. So now it's a museum. And so that's where we held our last meeting. And
Yes.
coming back on a flight that night, got on Reagan, went to Reagan Airport, got
Hmm.
on Southwest Airlines, flew across to San Diego. And I mean, literally, it was me and the flight crew on this flight. And it's a long
Yeah.
flight. And so um, I got service. Yeah. But we knew something bad was going to
Hmm.
happen. And
Hmm.
so then what? So I've been doing meetings for 20, 40, 20 years, crazy. And, a lot of contacts, a lot of know-how, a lot of money out the window.
Hmm.
But no, W- Paul, my technical partner, um,
Hi, Paul.
he got me involved in talk radio.
Hmm.
And that was in late '08, '09, and in San Diego. And
Hmm.
we began doing talk shows on radio, the internet,
Right.
but it was radio. So globalradiotalkshow.com was formed back then, and we're
Hmm.
still doing it. So now what we're doing, well, by the way, we've done over 200 broadcasts, but now they're called podcasts. So
Yes, I
anyway,
know.
we still call it globalradiotalkshow.com. Go and take a look. We dedicate ourselves to Louis Armstrong, and the theme song plays. What a wonderful world it could be. And so our show's popular.
Hmm.
So what
Hmm.
we're doing now, coming to full forward fast to here's 2022 on February 15, um, all of the broadcasts that we've been doing on Zoom, except for the few in the first few months where we didn't know what we were doing, um, are recorded, of course, for on
Hmm.
demand on
Hmm.
Zoom. Um, and broadcasting from globalbusinessnews.net, and that links to our own YouTube channel, which has become
Yes.
popular. But um, the way Zoom does it, and I'm not giving any secrets here, but you've got to look into Zoom. They're really great. Um, they give me not only the video in the raw form,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, before it goes into production with Paul. So, excuse me. Um, so the raw video comes in,
Hmm.
and then Paul does his snipping and tucking, and mixing and matching, gallery and speaker, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Be careful with the sound and the lighting. And so we get from Zoom word for word text printout,
Yes. Yes. Hmm.
and we also
Hmm.
get audio. So
Hmm.
what the project for 2022, by the end of 2022, we're going to take the best of the best TV shows and take the audio and put it
Hmm.
back on globalradiotalkshow.com. So
Perfect.
people can put
Yes.
on the headphones, go for a walk, bike ride, or whatever, and listen to the shows without looking at me.
Hmm.
So, Dr. Natalie, I welcome you to come back on the show someday, but be careful what you wish for.
I better. I better. It is so fascinating because obviously, I've done a little bit of like I've done a little bit of research and everything, and I know your numbers are staggering for many people. To think about how you've been able to accumulate the viewership, and I want to argue, you may disagree, but I want to argue that it's partially because of how you connect people. The one thing that is so I'm going to use a very feminine word, dear to me about you, is that whenever anybody is on your show, or even when we're not on a show, you always say, reach out to so and so, connect with so and so. You're always making sure that the people that you know connect and hopefully collaborate or help each other. I think that is a lost art in business nowadays, don't you?
I don't think it's a lost art, but people have been really busy trying to get their lives together,
Hmm.
particularly the last year and a half or so.
Right.
And there's so much stress, which of course, in
Hmm.
spades. But a very long time ago, I was connected with a Hollywood company.
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into names right now, but I wasn't in front of the camera; I was behind it, and
Hmm.
in doing marketing, and particularly for younger people at the time about films and
Hmm.
what booking films into what theater, and certain films at the time, like Woodstock. Um, Now, at that time, when that movie came out, there were people who were older than me actually running theaters and booking
Right.
movies and making
Yes.
decisions about should we book that film? Uh, so, in a neighborhood theater, no.
Not happening.
But the company that I worked for had movie theaters in a lot of places, but uh,
Hmm.
it wasn't my family's company. I worked for someone else. So the boss. Uh, um, was a guy older than me, my current age. So his son was about 38, 40 at the time.
Hmm.
And I was like 26, 27. Excuse me. Um, and Woodstock came out. And so my job was to review films in the office in Boston, downtown Boston. They had a movie theater inside the
Hmm.
office, small
Oh,
screen,
cool.
they call it.
Yeah.
And so lunchtimes, play a movie, you know, eat McDonald's or whatever. And so Woodstock was one of the movies. This was about a year before it actually hit the movie theaters. And it was a director's cut,
Hmm.
raw, not fancy. And so the old people in the office, all the office workers, the ladies, the
Right.
guys, the accountants, and ownership, we all came in. It was all very friendly. And they couldn't stand it. People in the mud, they're smoking dope, they're doing
Right.
this, they're going to the bathroom down the walk. It rained. Oh my God, what a mess. So I said, this is junk. We're not going to play that in our theaters. So I said, well, hello. Here I am, 26, 27 years old. And so I said, you know, college kids are going to eat this up,
Yep.
and then younger generations. And then, you know, weirdos will also go. But you got to book it in the movie theaters we have
Yeah.
at Brown University, near Princeton University, near Harvard, uh, and they did. And the movie, bang, through the roof
Hmm.
came up. And so I was just a kid. I was like, good job, Ed, good job. And so that was my real beginnings in understanding
Hmm.
the power of PR and
Right.
advertising and connecting with a specific market. And what do you
Hmm.
do with that specific market? So, um, the rage has been not just in the past 2 years because of the pandemic, but forever in marketing. Who's your customer?
Right.
Identify your customer. Now, obviously, there's more than one kind of customer.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
what messages are you going to give to this customer and
Hmm.
that group of customers? It's going to
Right.
be different. And so, tastes are going to be different. And so, how do you manage all that? Anyway, I learned how to do that. And, uh, and so here I am now it's not Hollywood. I'm sitting in my my living room here.
Right. Right.
That
Yes. Yes. Yes.
this you can't see it, but the dining room table is right here. And I'm in the Seaport Village, and right over there, out the window, you can't see it, are the Hyatts, and they're 50-story buildings, two of them
Right,
overlooking the ocean. Okay, and so. Uh, I'm not in a movie theater and I'm not in
right.
Hollywood, but I'm sitting
Yeah.
right here using Zoom or StreamYard,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and we can do magic. So the concept, getting back to your question or comment about bringing people together, is that we already had all these contacts from our
Mm-hmm.
marketing of the magazines and from sending out PR about the different conferences, live conferences that we did for
Right.
24 years.
Yeah.
So we wound up producing live conferences to the extent of about 350
Mm-hmm.
from 1984 through uh, March 1, 2020. And someday we're going to do it again. But right now, I'm really comfortable doing this, and the costs are
Mm-hmm.
lower. The the reach is terrific because there are people who are going to see this in India and in
Right.
Sri Lanka and New Zealand and China and Taipei and Pakistan and Tehran, as well as Dubai and Israel
Right.
and Beirut and Cairo and South Africa and Lagos, Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and Casablanca. And you can't do that live.
Right. But you got 400 people into a room. I mean, and that was like before it was hip to have conferences.
1999. We partied like it was 1999, let me tell you.
Right.
Because now this was in Paris and it was in
Yeah.
November. And it was, so, right around November 15, their Bougeot Nouveau, God, I can't remember. I'm getting old. So the wine comes in, the cheap wine,
Yes. Cheap wine. Okay.
comes in, and they make a big deal out of it around November 15. And
Mm-hmm.
so, young lady that helped me, she was an expat wife, and she was very plugged into all the women's clubs and everything else. She had met a distributor of the Beaujolais, Nouveau Beaujolais,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so she got them to donate it, and I called the distributor a sponsor and gave them a display table, and
Yes.
then they knew a big distributor of cheeses.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and then so
Correct.
that guy brought in a table and put cheese in
Mm-hmm.
next to the wine table, and then of Beaujolais Nouveau Beaujolais, right? And then somebody else in that group, that network, all right,
Mm-hmm.
of expat wives in Paris, and they lived in the 16th, so it was kind of hip, and they knew everybody and everything, right?
Yes.
And so they happened to know the Paris-based distributor of a California wine called Gallo. Now, Gallo is a famous name in
Yes.
California winemaking, but it's always been at the low market
Mm-hmm. Right.
rather
Yeah.
than rich. It was no. And
Yeah.
everybody said, Gallo, you're going to have Gallo at your conference in the Meridian Montparnasse, you nuts? And I said, no, they're going to bring in their new high quality wine that is made specifically for Paris. I said, right, sure. So they brought in all these jugs. I mean, and they were pouring the wine out to everybody. And oh my God, it was quite a thing. And then somebody else got in touch with uh, so in the Paris subway, in the, Paris metro, they have buskers, in other words, people
Mm-hmm.
who sit around in the hallways where you walk through to
Right.
go to the trains. The sound effects in these hallways is fantastic. It's like going to a bathroom in a shower and singing, right? It's like a volume is created. So anyway, this guy walked up to one of the buskers, a musician, who apparently sounded like he knew what he was doing. He was playing the saxophone, and the sound was terrific, a bass sax. I'll never forget this. And um, so we hired him to go find some other street people to bring their instruments and sit in the ballroom and
Yes.
play play some music, and we'd give them some money, right? And food and drink. And they came. They were
Good.
really good. And so people came to learn something, but I don't remember much other than a couple of cool speakers. So it was highly memorable and a
Yeah.
good way to open a market for
Right.
us.
Well, and I think that is what you just illustrated. Is I think what a lot of people underestimate, the power of connection. And you and I, we've now known each other, and part of the reason why I'm here with the LA Tribune is because it's about connections, about making real connections. And that's why I wanted you on here, because you are such a true connector and you believe in providing value. And I want to talk about the value, but I do have to take a little break, just a teeny tiny break. So everybody just don't go anywhere, stay where you're at. I know where you're at. You're
Cheers.
commenting, and we'll be right back.
Hello and welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune. Since 1886, our name has been a part of the world of journalism. We have earned a reputation for being a publication that practices integrity, authenticity, and responsibility. For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
And we are back. Now, before I just let Ed talk a little bit more about his fascinating experiences, everybody remember we have a lot of shows, so check out all the other shows that we're having as well, because they're all also about value, about bringing you something that you can apply in real life. And Ed does this, it looks like, on a daily basis. Now, most of the work that I see you do is on LinkedIn and, of course, YouTube. The value that you provide is, to me, the fact that you address real topics that are important right now. So I remember, for example, the last one that I was blessed to participate in for a short period of time was actually about this new big term, the big resignation that a lot of people are talking about, which of course is huge, and especially in HR, especially globally across the world. So why do those things matter to you, to look at what is happening now? What is your impetus with the shows that you put together so brilliantly?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's the mental illness and mental stress has impacted everybody for sure since the pandemic started,
Mhm.
but it's always been around, except that it wasn't talked about.
Right.
And I think you've seen the stats publicly available that most of the people who have quit their jobs, women.
Hmm.
Maybe it's because they're tired of being hassled or living an imposter way in the
Right.
office, and it's not real. And because they have real responsibilities now with the kiddos at home,
Hmm.
and schooling is or isn't getting done right, and being around the house more and still being productive. They
Hmm.
figured out, most, not all, but most have figured out how to allocate time and use of the computer and um, go out and get some exercise as a family.
Right.
Uh, and they never could do that
Hmm.
during a normal workaday pattern. And they said, where's the value I'm getting by going back to the office? And God, I'm
Mm.
afraid. Is it clean? Is it safe? Do I have to dress up? Well, so maybe I want to sometimes because I'm tired of wearing my slippers.
Right.
But so that's what's driving all that. But
Hmm. Hmm.
how can companies relate better to the people, their employees? That's
Right.
really important
Hmm.
more than ever. It's nothing new, but more than ever, it's important. So it's a realignment, uh, and the workers, employees, have protested
Okay.
walking out the door
Hmm. Hmm.
or not
Hmm.
coming back.
Right.
Um, and so it's been a really tumult for chief human resource officers, people
Hmm.
officers, who haven't figured it out, who who aren't in tune. And so what you're seeing, I think, more than ever, is a transformation. In other words, a lot of
Hmm.
people who were older but in management positions, uh, the old school, if you will, um, they're being told to get out,
Right.
and they're being replaced by women or younger people who can relate to a younger workforce,
Hmm.
particularly tech workforce.
Yeah.
And working from home, working from anywhere can work out. They just haven't figured out all how to dot the i's and cross the t's with compliance and taxes and
Hmm.
report
Hmm.
and comp and ben issues. Um, and so that's all being worked out. What will probably happen as a result of all this will be a transformation uh,
Hmm.
across time, across space, across silos.
Yeah.
So it's also not just the Great Resignation; it's it's a time for bringing harmony. Uh, our friend and part-time co-host Stephen Howard, author of 21 books on leadership, is writing a book now involving what he's calling humany,
Hmm. Hmm.
Humony, humany, which is like harmony.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
And so we were talking on one show recently, he and I, we had somebody else as a guest, um, about crashing HR departments,
Hmm.
hollowing them out, and take all the compliance related paperwork and responsibilities away from the HR person and giving them to um, the VP operations,
Right.
where all the other paperwork goes, I mean, and all the other compliance and
Yes.
purchasing and whatever, and so that the new HR could be called human harmony, people
Right.
officer.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
they
People
they can
officer.
help
Yeah.
people find where their sweet spot is,
Hmm.
their capabilities. People want to develop their capabilities and then use the capabilities in a new way, not in the old way. And
Hmm.
so companies have to adapt to that, and many already are.
Right.
But it's a work in progress.
Hmm. Hmm. And I remember because you were mentioning, hi Lindsay, you were mentioning, the stress altogether and the wellness and how things are shifting. I remember putting you in contact, I think, with Denise O'Malley, who of course is all about
Yeah,
wellness as
right.
well. And exactly what you're saying, HR needs to maybe look at doing things a little bit differently to really be the
Yeah.
people.
So I'm not in HR.
I know.
I got an itch here. Uh, sorry. Um, so it's just like whoa. uh, uh, Hi, Carlton. Um, so Lindsay has some really
Yes, Lindsay.
good thoughts,
Yes.
about all that. So
Hmm.
you should have her on your show.
Awesome. There we go. See, connecting again.
Yeah. So and Carlton is he's now a bestseller, right?
Yes, yes,
That
yes.
book. Way to go. So
Yeah,
I'm not an HR, but I work with many, um,
right.
and many of them have been a guest on global TV talk show,
Hmm.
and hopefully they'll come back and do more. So they've got their hands full, and
Yeah.
it is a time for learning, and for employees to learn new things and
Mm-hmm.
how to give better feedback. One
Right.
of our other guests was Sergey Gorbatov, who's with a big pharma company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's now in Southern California, relocated from Madrid uh,
Mm-hmm.
to just recently to not take over, but to build up Latin America for
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's all about feedback. In
Yeah.
fact, he wrote a
It
book with
is. Yeah.
uh, another leader um, called Fair Talk, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all about feedback within organizations. And
Yes.
um, yeah, so anyway, more
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and then doing
Yeah.
something about it, demonstrating that you care in an
Mm-hmm.
honest way.
Right. Well, and then it's, I think you and I talked about that, but one of my books is actually about, was specific to the health industry, but dealing with how can we actually make sure that our employees, especially the representatives who pick up the phone, actually feel valued and feel like somebody cares. That feedback loop that you mentioned is really, really important. But in addition to the feedback and the global HR, you don't just do global HR, which I always find interesting because the global HR news, the global radio talk show, it's all about HR in some ways. You are also always honoring others, not just on your show, but for example, on March 8th, coming up, you are creating a show that is about International Women's Day. And I know that you're bringing in speakers, well, and I shouldn't say speakers, but experts, real people, thought leaders of today from across the globe. So why is that important to you? Whether it's Dr. Lindsay, right? Is that, yeah, Dr. Lynn, I believe. I
Yeah,
don't know if Angela
Dr.
is going to be
Lynn
back. Yeah.
Lynn Schmidt, right?
Yes. And then Irma, I think, is going to be on there. She is amazing. So what makes you do a show about International Women's Day? Hint, you're a guy.
So I'll tell you what, I've got a mother. I had a mother and a sister, um,
Mm-hmm.
and more than half of my clients are female.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in touch. But um, I was introduced to Dr. Lynn Schmidt, who's formerly a corporate officer in tech. Um, uh, she's written several books, and
Mm-hmm.
she's become a keynoter and advisor to corporate women. Um, and her newest book has just come out, or just coming out. Um, and it's, I forget the exact name. It's about, we're all to some degree sexist,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
whether we like it or not.
Anti-sexist, right? Is that the book?
That's the book, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I was introduced to Dr. Lynn Schmidt by Stephen Howard, Caliente Leadership. And as I mentioned earlier, he is a co-sponsor of our Thrive and Strive, co-host
Mm-hmm.
of our Thrive and Strive series. We've done many interviews with people involved in people management, HR.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and one of them was Dr. Lynn Schmidt, who
Mm-hmm.
had written some other books earlier. And she was a guest of Stephen, and I was facilitating, of course. And that's how we met. And so we hit it off. And then I said, well, why don't you come on my show and we could do a deep dive
Yeah.
on your other books. And then she says, well, I'm writing this new book in sync with the coming March 8th
Mm-hmm.
International Women's Day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of days for a lot of different groups. So, here's
True.
another
True.
one,
Especially in
right?
the U.S. Yes.
So, I said, boy, that's a good idea. Why don't you come on and we'll do a talk show about your book? And then we could
Mm-hmm.
talk about the Women's Day and what it is, right?
Right.
So it turns out that the book, about being an anti-sexist and how to recognize that you are, and she says everybody is to some extent, but just to become more knowledgeable about microaggressions
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
offhand remarks which may be thought to be demeaning.
Right.
All right, and maybe they weren't, or just a cultural habit to say something like, um, well, you're a blonde, and boy, you're acting like it now, or
Right.
something stupid like
Yes.
that. But
Yes.
it used to be funny, not funny,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it could be taken the wrong way by
Right.
many people. So the idea is to be aware, to
Mm-hmm.
to be cognizant of your
Right.
words and
Mm-hmm.
your attitudes. And she says, oh, don't worry, everybody has some kind of bias about something, whether it's
Right.
about bias about you with a beard
Yeah. Yeah.
or white hair or something, my last name or whatever. Okay, so
Exactly.
um, she and I have decided to tell the world about her book.
That's a
And
great idea. Yeah.
so it's PR 101
Mm-hmm.
on steroids. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. And so we decided, well, why don't we do a meeting and you be the keynoter and just
Exactly.
invite some people, right? And
Yeah.
this was about a month ago. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were just stone sober. I mean, really, it was like a morning talk show. And it was no funny business at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, we said, okay, well, let's stay in touch. Let's set the date. And I said, okay, so in the broadcasting business, you have to set a date and a
Right.
time. Uh, all right. So we push to get to the date and time and the basic format. Right. So how are we going to do this? Who's going to do what?
Mm-hmm.
Date and time. Right. Because I've got to make arrangements as the
Yeah.
producer. Right. So we did that. And then that mechanism, and I'm talking about how does all this get engineered, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking engineering principles and construction and design and construction and applying it to an intangible of building a conference out of thin air. How is
Woo!
this going to work, and what's going to keep it standing up and not
Mm-hmm.
crunch?
Right. Right.
uh-huh. Okay, so um, we started thinking about who would be appropriate and who wouldn't be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So she decided, okay, we're going to check back in a week, okay, and a phone call. Um, you talk to some people, I'll talk to some people, right? And so we set a date for March 8th and a start time of 7 a.m. in LA, which is 3 p.m. in London, 4 p.m. in Central European time, which covers a
Yep.
huge area, and 6 p.m. in Saudi Arabia, 7 p.m. in Dubai,
Okay.
8:30 p.m. in India and Sri Lanka,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but midnight in the Far East,
Right.
okay,
Right.
in
Right.
Asia Pacific. So we decided, they're not going to do it. And so we should do a separate show for Asia Pacific. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so how do we do that? So I Googled, if it's 7 a.m. in LA, what time is it in Taipei?
Right.
And then bang, it was whatever, 9 or 10 a.m., right? And so what else? A whole bunch of markets are in the same time zone.
Mm-hmm.
But Australia and New Zealand, no, they're further out, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
decided March 7 in LA at 5 p.m. is like 9 or 10 a.m. over there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in Australia, New Zealand, um, it's like noontime or so, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. So I'm doing two shows. So then I said, oh my God. So now I got to go find people. So I happen to know from our past talk shows some people in, I want to say Melbourne, but I was
Mm-hmm.
corrected by the natives. It's Melbourne.
Okay.
Don't say Melbourne. It's Melbourne,
Okay.
and then you'll sound
Melbourne.
like you fit in.
Okay,
So
Melbourne.
yeah, Melbourne. Okay. And then we had this show with this owner of a business, relocation business in Auckland, New Zealand,
Mhm.
and it was everything was shut down because of the pandemic. So our guest Robin, no, not Robin, but I got it wrong. I got to look at my notes, and so she was just dying to talk to people. So we had
Right.
a talk show about what's going on and what's her business all about. And so I said, geez, you should be on this program. And so,
Yes.
and when we get off of this and after I have a breakfast, I'm going to send messages to
Mhm.
my friends in Auckland and Sydney and Melbourne. And we already picked up a speaker in Perth, which is in the far west of
Right. Yes.
Australia.
Yes.
So as it turns out, Perth, the way they set it up, even though it's far west, it's in the same time zone vertically as Taipei and
Okay.
Seoul
Perfect. Perfect
and
alignment.
Tokyo.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
we got this research, the scientists from the oil and gas industry to be one of our keynoters. And then she started introducing me to some other people. Uh, first she talked to them and said, "Hey, you
Mhm.
got to look at this guy, what he's doing here. He's putting together meetings. Here's a link to a previous show that I was on."
Mhm.
And Muriel sent that uh, to her friends in India and elsewhere.
Mhm.
And then they all decided, hey, I'm going to jump on too. Okay.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
both programs, Asia Pacific and the rest of the world, uh, began getting populated like almost overnight.
Mhm.
And so it turns out now that our program for the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and India and Sri Lanka are all in one program. And it's like
Mhm.
boffo, like whoa, it's through the roof. Over 20 speakers already,
Mhm.
and a couple are more pending. And Dr. Natalie, you should try to make some time and be on that show.
You know I will. Yeah, I told you I will do my best.
Okay, good. I know it's a bad time of day for you, but
Well, just like you got up early, right?
yeah, but I know you have a family situation and
Yes.
you need
Yes.
time there. But anyway, our shows will run about 2 hours, so some people will jump off or come
Mhm.
in late, and I don't care. I'm flexible. We got plenty of people to talk with.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
how do you manage all that stuff, right? So, again, the engineering, or else what's going to happen? It'll be just babble
Right.
if it's not managed right. So, I decided here's what to do. I decided to invite all my speakers to collaborate with me in advance about what's important to them. But
Yes.
don't give me sentences. I'll never even read them. But give me bullet points,
Right.
keywords,
Yes, you
phrases,
like bullet points.
and because it's like boop, right there, and everyone knows who gives me the bullet points a lot about each one of those little bullet points. And I don't need to know all that, but you need to
Mhm.
know about it. And so please be prepared to talk about stuff in a dialogue with me, and I'll ask you to comment, and you will be comfortable, right? With
Right.
Ed's asking you to speak about
Mhm.
these things for a few minutes.
Right.
And then we open it up to invite this person and that person and that
Mhm.
person and that person. And then there's a dialogue. Meanwhile, in the chat, which is down the bottom here,
Yes.
I say, I want you to send your email address and
Mhm.
website to everybody.
Right.
And everybody started doing that right away. Bang, 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 bang.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's where the networking came in.
Yes.
And so I just dropped the idea to people who are communicators anyway. And bang, all of a sudden we have thin air. It's almost like using Legos to
Mhm.
build a
Mhm.
structure. All right. And then cementing it with people underneath, lifting it
Right.
up and going further and further. And
Yeah.
so that's the dynamic. All
Yes.
right. So the engineering of a concept is just like building a skyscraper. Only
Mm-hmm.
the materials are different.
Yeah.
So by having the bullet points, I know what's important to this person, and the other person, and I have it all in front of me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps me prep, knowing, okay, how much information and who's going to be talking about similar things
Right.
and who's not going to be talking about those things, something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long
It's
list. And
yeah.
so, but now I've got it grouped in category talk,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because all that goes to managing the talk flow, what I call talk flow,
Right.
right? And because that's the content, that's the fodder, if you will, for the feed.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I have to manage time. All right. So some people have already told me, well, Ed, I've got a meeting that I've got to get
Yep.
into, so I have to jump off at 10:30, but not a
Right.
minute later. And so, okay, so I'll put you on between 10 and 10:30, your time. All right. Which is my time, 7 a.m., 7:30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means within that first 30 minutes, I've got to do my intros. I want to get
Right.
everybody briefly introduced. And then right away, I have to go to this person because they've got to leave. And okay, so I'm not telling everybody that in advance because then everyone will say, "Hey, I have to leave too."
Exactly.
Everybody
Yeah.
wants to climb in, right? And so that becomes the management thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's not a science, although it sounds like the construction of the conference and how to manage it is. And so it's the technique of putting it
Right.
together. But without the people, the good people who we have, who are once again usually extroverts,
Yeah.
not always, and type A, it's like, whoa, it's really electric.
Yes. It always is because they're always good conversations. And sometimes I feel I know you're sort of like, conducting everything. But sometimes, one person says something and then it flows so nicely because all of a sudden people want to react to it, which is always beautiful. And I advise everybody to check out Ed Cohen and the Global Radio Talk Show. I always see it pop up consistently on LinkedIn, but you heard, YouTube channel, everything is there. And I've been posting the link the whole time in here, so you
Thank you.
can't
Thank you.
miss it.
Yeah. So
um,
if anybody wants to reach me,
yes.
my LinkedIn is Edwin B. Cohen because there's a lot of Ed Cohens out there.
Right.
So it's Edwin B. Cohen. But, better would be a text, and WhatsApp is okay. So for outside the US, it's +1 619 787 3100. And you know what? That's going to come right here. Okay.
Oh my goodness. You
And
just
so,
gave the whole world your phone number.
yeah, that's okay. And email is also okay. This is a unique email. Um, publisher at global business, one word, dot media, media, publisher at global
Mhm.
business dot media, and that'll get right to me. Okay, so
Absolutely.
you can reach me directly right there. So
Yes.
I'm not going to give you out long website addresses and all that because it's mind bending. But if you go to globalbusinessnews.net, you'll see what we call the front page.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of information right there. Um, and you can click on any of that stuff. Okay.
Yes.
And you could bookmark it if you see something you like.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of links. Uh, but if you look at the masthead on the top of that page, you'll see radio, TV, magazines, whatever. All right, you can click on any one of those, and then it becomes a deep dive. There's
Yeah.
almost 1,000 pages on that website, and so don't get lost. Come back to
Well, they always can go back
globalbusinessnews.net.
home, as we say, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to just say what's in the future coming up
Yes.
about these two shows. Um,
Absolutely.
so it's free registration, free, but you have to register first so we know what kind of bandwidth we're going to need. Okay. And so once again, um, text me or email me, and I'll get you the link. And you can find information on globalbusinessnews.net starting in about 10 minutes from now. We'll put up a special banner for the listeners to the Dr. Natalie show. And you know what? I'll know that you've listened and watched the show because that'll be the tracking device. So you know that when you use the internet properly, authentically, you can get any information that you want. And so it's the application of that and the goodness of your attitude when you use that information, not to abuse. Um, but it's there; it's all public information. Uh, so, globalbusinessnews.net has a lot of information. You'll see our newspaper, our magazine. These are offshoots from globalbusinessnews.net, but there's so much information from the more than 400 global TV talk shows that we've done since spring of 2020 through yesterday. Can you imagine that? 400. And it's growing. We'll probably do close to 200 additional programs through the year 2022. That's about 15 or so a month average. 15 times 12, you know. So um, we have a system of organizing all of that where we have groups such as the series we've started with the help of Mark Colo, who's a board member of this charity, which has become our favorite charity, called findneurohelp.org. That's find, Neuro, findneurohelp.org. Go check it out. It's about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis, MS, or ALS, which is the former Lou Gehrig's disease. It's all brain and malfunctions. Yeah, that's it. Mark Colo is one of the founders, and he's a director, and he's our co-host on a series that he and I have started called Medical TV Talk Shows. And we've done 5 or 6. In fact, yesterday we did a very interesting show with Dr. Jean Loring. She's a world-renowned research scientist who happens to be based here in San Diego. Um, she's an expert on stem cells, how to use them, how to grow them, what to do with them. And it's research and it's science. So they're trying to figure out if they can um, properly place a stem cell or multiple ones into a brain that's malfunctioning or in decline because of one of those afflictions, one of those diseases. So, for instance, Parkinson's is shakes, and um, that's because some parts aren't working anymore. So, what caused that to stop? Well, that's one of the research that Dr. Loring is doing. Anyway, she was on the talk show yesterday, and we recorded that. It hasn't been made ready for streaming or on demand yet. But she talks in plain English about what happens in the brain and how the stem cells are made, and it's all from embryos. So it's really out there. And we have another show coming up, which is going to be talking about the vaccines and the Omicron or whatever it's called, and the variants that are out there now,
Mm-hmm.
and the unfortunate news is that there's a new variant that's out there, and they haven't released information about it yet because they're not sure. And there'll probably be another vaccine booster
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
needed. So look, every year I get a flu shot. So here's going to get whatever shot, you
Yeah.
know,
Whatever shot.
you know. So anyway, we're learning about all this stuff on medical TV, but we also have an education series, and this talks about online learning
Mm-hmm.
and how it can be a good thing for kids, and how to keep them involved and getting the parents involved properly, um, and how to motivate the kids to want to do
Right.
something better. So we have a whole series of education TV shows,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all under the umbrella of global
Yes.
TV talk shows.
Amazing. And I know you're going to come up with a lot more. And then I think you're going to start traveling again.
Well,
So,
we're trying to get together with some people in Europe, including you,
mm-hmm.
to do a tour,
Mm-hmm.
um, of a meeting, live meetings, actually a hybrid meeting, where we're going to use the screen part of the in-person meeting, so
Right.
our audience can be bigger, and people don't have to spend money to get there. But some people will want to be in the room.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to go to London, um, and then we're going to take the channel into Paris and do a meeting there, and then we're going to take the TGV over to Geneva and do a meeting there, and then we're going to take the train uh, to Zurich and do a meeting there, and then I'd love to do a meeting with you in Hamburg because I've never been
Or
there.
I'll come down to Zurich. I mean, who cares? But yes,
So
Hamburg is definitely a must.
so that's our plan right now, and we
Mm-hmm.
were considering starting it in late April or May or maybe June. But there's so much going on now with the pandemic and the disease, and now with the geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe, and the impact or the potential impact on the general economy.
Mm-hmm.
Man, who needs another issue to deal with? And so we might push this back
Yeah.
later in the spring or into summer, but that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm calling these meetings VIP, and doesn't mean that Dr. Natalie is a VIP. Well, she is, but what it means to me and the marketing, PR again, is virtual, in person, VIP. So that this is the theme of our meetings. We'll have a live speakers
Mm-hmm.
in a conference room in a hotel, um, and we'll have some people. But I don't suspect it'll be as many people who are in the
Right.
audience right here watching us, but
Yeah. Yeah.
enough. Okay, and then there'll be a projection of through Zoom, um,
Mm-hmm.
to the audience worldwide. And the whole thing's recorded. So it'll be on our site and then on demand streaming
Yes.
forever. And you know what? For the virtual, there's never ever a registration fee for our meetings. Everybody's welcome, free.
Mm.
We are supported by sponsors,
Right.
and these are sponsors who have money to not throw away, but to apply to this because they want their brand to be associated
Of
with
course.
what we're doing.
Yes.
And that means their logo is shown to
Yes.
everybody and they're introduced specially. And it's not a lot of money. We'll get into that at another time. But the sponsors are the ones who are allowing me to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that we're really blessed to have this opportunity. Thank you. And um, since we started in spring, the TV shows, since
Mm-hmm.
we started the TV shows in spring of 2020 through just yesterday or the day before,
Yeah.
we have produced over 400 of these, and all of them are available on our YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
and also on our site, globalbusinessnews.net. The YouTube channel is a little tricky to get to. It's under Edwin B. Cohen,
Okay.
and also global TV talk shows.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and it's free access.
Right.
So we've had, according to Google Analytics, over 151,000 what they call audience page views
Mm-hmm.
since spring of 2020. And the past 30 days or so, from early January through yesterday or the day before,
Mm-hmm.
according to Google Analytics, they have tracked a little bit more than 7,000 audience page views in that 30-day period. That's breakthrough. That's the highest
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
for a 30-day period
That's
uh,
amazing.
in
Yeah.
all this. And it's because of people like you, Dr. Natalie, who are on uh, our program because they want to reach our audience, of course, but
Mhm.
they have something interesting to say, or else they wouldn't find their
Right.
way on our program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity.
No, thank you, Ed. And continue doing what you're doing. Clearly, there's a demand out there because otherwise you wouldn't get the views. You wouldn't get experts coming and saying, "Yes, I want to participate." So thank you for that. And everybody in the audience, all of the information on how to reach Ed is there, including his phone number. So very daring, but including the phone number. Be on the lookout for Ed on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Ed, I thank you for getting up so early.
Oh,
I hope you can have
I'm energized. I was thinking I'd probably climb back into bed, but not yet.
well, at least have breakfast. Thank you so much. I'll see you
Thank
all
you.
later. Bye.
See you on the TV.
Yes, bye.
Ciao.